You don't join a Roman legion, you are absorbed into it. And at first it feels like honor, a uniform on your shoulders, a shield in your grip, a place in something larger than yourself. But the march teaches you quickly that Rome does not need heroes. Rome needs endurance. And endurance is far more frightening because it does not break you loudly. It reshapes you quietly. The first thing you learn is not the clash of weapons or shouted commands. It is the rhythm, thousands of sandals striking earth in exact synchronization. Never early, never late, because if your foot lands out of time, the man behind you stumbles. And if he stumbles, the line bends. And if the line bends, you are noticed. And in a legion, being noticed is dangerous. By the third week, your shoulders no longer feel like your own. The pack never leaves your back unless ordered. Shield, tools, rations, wooden stakes for the nightly camp. The load is not unbearable. That is the brilliance of it. It is just heavy enough to remind you that Rome is always pressing down, always present, even when no one is speaking. Then, without warning, the pattern changes and the horn sounds after sunset. You pack in darkness and march beneath a sky that offers no comfort. No torches are lit. No one explains the reason. And you begin to understand that comfort itself is being trained out of you. Because if day can become night without explanation, then stability is an illusion, and illusions are weaknesses Rome cannot afford. Camps become identical in shape and distance, perfect rectangles carved into unfamiliar soil, tents aligned in rigid rows, fires measured precisely, the latrine placed with mathematical consistency. And at first, the repetition feels safe until you realize it is designed to stop you from thinking, because when every camp is the same, you move by memory instead of thought, and memory is easier to command than individuality. Soon another rule emerges: silence during construction. No casual words. No murmured complaints. Only the sound of stakes driven into earth and armor shifting with effort. And in that silence, your thoughts grow louder than any battlefield could be. You begin to hear your breathing as if it belongs to someone else. The wind carries shapes that may not exist, and when men cannot speak outwardly, they turn inward, and inward voices are rarely gentle. Rain begins, and the march does not slow. Mud thickens beneath your sandals. Straps chafe against skin. Exhaustion becomes a constant companion rather than an event, and you expect rest. But instead, the distance increases. The centurion walks the line without raising his voice. He simply watches, and the watching is worse than shouting because it forces you to measure yourself against an invisible standard that is never explained. Gradually, you realize the legion is measuring you as well, not with rulers, but with observation. How quickly you lift your pack, how straight you stand when tired, how long your eyes linger on the horizon instead of forward on the shield ahead, and they do not correct you immediately. They simply record you in memory, and that knowledge alters everything. You are no longer just marching. You are being evaluated in ways you cannot see. One morning, your position changes, and you are moved from the center of the column to the outer edge. No explanation offered, and the outer edge feels exposed. Wind cuts sharper. Distant sounds reach you first. The forest seems closer, and you understand that the center was protection, and the edge is responsibility. And assignments are never accidental. Food becomes predictable and measured until one evening the rations shrink slightly without announcement. No speech accompanies the reduction. The veterans do not complain. They simply chew slower, and the message sinks deeper than hunger. Adaptation must be silent. Visible discomfort is weakness. During inspection, a soldier is called forward, and you brace for spectacle, but none comes. He is simply reassigned to logistical duties behind the formation, removed from the shield wall, removed from the rhythm, not disgraced publicly, but erased structurally. And that quiet erasure teaches you more than any punishment could. The Legion does not need to destroy you loudly. It only needs to reposition you until you are invisible. Soon, you are ordered to sleep in armor for consecutive nights, the weight pressing against ribs, breath shallow, dreams fractured by the constant pressure of metal and leather. Fatigue ceases to be temporary and becomes permanent. And in that permanent exhaustion, discipline is tested in subtle ways, slower reactions, heavier steps, thoughts that wander. Yet the line must remain perfect. You pass villages without entering them. Civilians watch from doorways, but you are ordered not to acknowledge them, not to meet their eyes. And in that restraint, you realize you are no longer representing yourself. You are a moving boundary, an idea in armor, a silent demonstration of Rome's reach. Weeks fold into repetition, and repetition into tension, because every repeated action carries the possibility of sudden change. And one morning the horns do not sound at all. Silence stretches uncomfortably long. Confusion simmers beneath disciplined stillness until an order finally arrives in whispers rather than shouts. Break camp in half the usual time. No noise, no mistakes, and the compression of routine creates anxiety sharper than any open threat. Predictability had been a hidden mercy. Uncertainty is the sharper instrument. Individual identity fades gradually. You stop thinking in terms of yourself and begin thinking in terms of formation. Yet even the sense of we feels fragile because the Legion does not promise personal survival. It promises continuity. If one space empties, another fills it seamlessly. The shape never changes even when faces do. A veteran confides one evening that the hardest part is not confrontation, but waiting, standing in perfect stillness for hours, resisting the urge to move when instinct demands it, maintaining composure under invisible pressure. And you begin to understand that Rome conquers first, by mastering its own impulses before mastering others. Inspections intensify on a pattern you eventually recognize. Every 10th day, standards sharpen, minor flaws corrected, posture adjusted, straps tightened, and you realize the Legion moves in cycles larger than your awareness, synchronized with supply lines and distant decisions, and the machine functions whether or not you comprehend it. Winter arrives and marching continues through frost and shortened daylight, breath forming pale clouds that vanish instantly, sleep reduced further, morale unspoken because morale is not part of calculation. Only obedience is measurable. A centurion falls ill, and by sunset another stands in his place. No ceremony interrupts the rhythm, and it becomes undeniable that positions matter more than personalities. Loyalty is directed upward toward structure rather than sideways toward individuals. Slowly, the external fears diminish, and a new fear replaces them. The fear of misalignment, of stepping out of rhythm, of becoming the flaw that weakens cohesion. And this internalized vigilance is perhaps the most effective transformation of all. Months blur into a year, and civilian memories fade like distant dreams. Markets, laughter, spontaneity feel foreign. Your world is measured in distance, commands, and repetition, and even in sleep. Your mind arranges itself in rows and formations. Then one final escalation unfolds when you are ordered to march without destination revealed. No map shown, no explanation offered. Days pass beneath a sky that offers no answers. Speculation remains quiet because questions imply doubt, and doubt implies fragility. And by the 7th day, something shifts within you. You realize you would continue even without explanation. Purpose has been replaced by instruction, and that realization is heavier than any pack you have carried. At the edge of unfamiliar land, you build another identical camp as dusk settles and wind moves through rows of shields. The centurion speaks briefly not of glory, but of alignment and cohesion. And as the formation tightens once more, you understand that the brutal reality was never noise or spectacle. It was the slow surrender of self, the reshaping of identity into instrument, the endless rhythm that values order above comfort and continuity above memory. The horn sounds again. Shields lift, boots press into earth, and you step forward not because of hatred or ambition, but because the line moves. And when the line moves, you move. And Rome advances quietly, relentlessly, carried not by fury but by discipline. And that discipline is the heaviest burden of all.